welcome to First Things First. We made it to Friday. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That is Nick Wright. That is not the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. It is Chris Canty filling in. Still CC.
Still CC. It might not be a Hall of Famer, but I found out today, proud Bentley owner Chris Canty.
Wow, you just gonna put my business on
absolutely.
Wow.
Chris Canty.
Doing it like that?
Absolutely
wow.
right.
On behalf of the B train and the C train, we'd like you to welcome you to New York City.
Right. Thank you.
Public transportation, carrying out.
I'm all set on that train.
No, we're super excited to have you here.
Yes, thank you for sitting in. Chris is calling the Browns-Panthers game, so he's out today. Be back on Monday.
All right, good stuff. Big show today. LeBron James might be recruiting Melo. We had an insane performance last night in the NFL, but we start with must-see TV in the wide, wonderful world of football. Big matchup in the NFC East, Eagles and Cowboys. Philly trying to hold on to their playoff lives against division-leading Dallas. Now, Dallas has won 4 straight games, a win streak that started against the Eagles. According to some players, though, the Cowboys are setting themselves up to blow it. Take a listen.
I mean, look at Dallas' history. They always choke, so we'll go down there and make them choke.
You know, Coach Garrett has a great saying, and I don't know where he got it from, but winners worry about winning, and losers worry about winners. So we're focused on ourselves in this locker room about what we need to do to get better each and every phase of this game and be ready for this week. And we're not worried about he say, she say. When you play a game like this, that means what it means. What somebody says doesn't add any motivation. We know what we're capable of in this locker room. We know the team that we have. We just want to go out there and put that best team, the best team effort we can out there on Sunday.
I never understand why, and I've been covering sports for years, and I've been in locker rooms, why players find the need to go out and say something. Whether it should or not, it automatically becomes bulletin board material. But, Nick, I'll start with you. What's the key to, if the Cowboys are going to extend this streak, what's going to be the key to beating the Eagles?
So the easiest path is exactly what they did against the Saints defensively, which was, I believe, the single most impressive defensive performance in the NFL all season long. Better than anything any other team has done, given the stakes and given the opponent. But that's the easy thing to say. That is not the easy thing to go out there and actually execute. The thing that the Cowboys can control, that I think is the biggest key to them winning the football game, is not turning the ball over. I think they will be able to make some plays down the field because the Eagles' secondary is so beat up. We know what Zeke's going to be, and even if that defense is 70% of what it was against the Saints, that is an A-level defensive performance where the Cowboys, more than any other team in the league so far this year, where you can tell did they win, did they lose, is the turnover battle. The Saints game was the rare one where they lost it and still were able to win that football game. The Cowboys are 22-2 in Dak Prescott's career when he doesn't have a turnover. They now know who they are. They know that we are a defensive-first, run-the-football team. What can screw that up against anybody, what can certainly screw that up against a desperate Eagles team in their biggest game of the year, is if Dak holds onto the ball too long and doesn't just get sacked, but get strip-sacked. Is if they do put the ball on the ground either in the return game or in trying to throw the ball downfield. If they play a clean game, Canty, I think they win on Sunday.
Well, yeah, I don't necessarily know that they have to play a clean game just based on what they did on the Thursday night football game against the Saints. I mean, the Amari Cooper turnover gave the Saints the ball in plus territory. They were able to stop them in a goal-to-goal situation. And, of course, the late game strip sack by Cam Jordan gave the Saints the ball back and Drew Brees an opportunity to try to come back. But guess what? 2 plays later, he threw an interception to Jordan Lewis. So, I mean, this team, this defense is capable of overcoming the turnovers offensively. But I think the biggest thing for the Dallas Cowboys is just playing complementary football. I mean, if you have a really good defense, the best friend of that defense is going to be a running game that can keep those guys off the field. And the Philadelphia Eagles, they haven't played clean football this season, in my opinion. I mean, you had a situation in the Monday night game where they didn't convert on 2 red zone opportunities, just to waste, turnovers in goal-to-go situations. You can't have things like that happen and beat quality football teams. And so the way that the Dallas Cowboys are playing, especially on the defensive side of the ball, that would give me a little bit of concern if I'm Doug Peterson with the Philadelphia Eagles. Like Camus Grugier-Hill, he need to chill out. He need to stop talking and just focus on trying to go out there and execute. Because this Eagles team is a shell of what it was last year.
I would like to congratulate Camus Grugier-Hill because for the first time in his career, someone said his name on television.
I was going to say that's 2 people.
You broke the seal on that. I want to be clear. I'm not saying if the Cowboys turn the ball over, they can't win. What I am saying is If they don't turn the ball over, I don't see how they lose.
Yeah.
Is that, you know what I mean? Like
No,
they have a path to victory that isn't like the Saints game where they have a handful of turnovers. And Randy Gregory, it's not counted as a turnover, but when you rough the punter and when they're giving the ball away, that's a de facto turnover. And they were able to overcome all of that. One thing that we talk about Dallas's lack of explosive plays in the passing game, Jenna. This is, to me, a startling number because quarterback rating-wise, Carson Wentz is very similar this year to last year, but balls traveling 20 yards downfield, so deep throws. Last year was one of the best in football. 103 rating, did it 63 times, 854 yards on those 63 throws. This year, a 62 rating. 4 picks on those throws to just 2 touchdowns, and he's done it only 2/3 as many times. So they are not being explosive down the field. Now, part of that, I'm sure, is they lost their deep threat. They moved on from Torrey Smith. They brought in Mike Wallace. He's nowhere. He played 1 game for them this year, right? Like they have dealt with injuries there, and they don't have the play action game's not going to be as useful because ever since Jay Ajayi went down, they don't really have a credible running threat. But the reason I bring that up is Dallas can constrict them defensively without being so worried about being popped over the top. That plays in Dallas's favor.
What if the Eagles do win? Should they win this game? And we're talking a lot from the Cowboys' perspective, just because we saw what they did to the Saints Thursday night. Should the Eagles come out and win, does that now put them firmly in the driver's seat in the division?
Well, I'm not going to say it puts them in the driver's seat, but it gives them a chance. I think this is, well, clearly it's for first place. But,
right.
I mean, if you look at where the Dallas Cowboys are, if they happen to win this game, they all but lock up the division because they'd have a 2-game lead with 3 games to go. So, I mean, I look at this and say this is not a must-win situation for the Eagles, but it's almost a can't-lose. And if they're going to win this game, I think they're going to have to utilize Carson Wentz's ability to get on the edges of the defense, a lot of boots, sprint action, put pressure on him using his legs, and then allow him to have the run-pass option. I think that's what has to be the formula because going against that defensive line of the Dallas Cowboys, it's important that Doug Peterson moves the launch point because the last thing that you want to do is know Carson Wentz is going to be in the pocket and get this into a situation where he's got to drop back and throw the ball 35, 40 times. That can't be what Doug Peterson does, not with just straight dropbacks. It has to be some creativity in their offense. Get him on the edge of that Cowboys defense. I think he got a chance if he play that game.
If Dallas wins, they essentially clinch the division. If Dallas wins, the only way Philly can win the division is if Dallas goes 0-3 and Philly goes 3-0. So their magic number would become 1. The flip side, if Philly wins, Philly is tied with the tiebreaker edge as far as divisional record. So a Philly loss means they're finished. A Philly win means that they will, for the moment, be the divisional leaders. Now, they have a tougher schedule down the stretch. A Philly win by no means locks it up for them. But a loss eliminates them. Yeah. So we have a race if Philly wins this game. If Dallas wins this game, then Dallas all of a sudden is saying, can we catch the Bears? Can we move up in the seeding past the 4 line? But if Philly wins, those final 3 games is what will determine the division. If Dallas wins, the division will have been determined.
I want to ask you a quick question about the intangibles before we break. This Cowboys team defensively played about as well as they could play against the Saints, and you talk about complementary football, their offense did the same. Now, how do they get as jacked up, as hyped up, as excited for an Eagles team who they know not nearly as good as the Saints? I mean, they did everything right from Jerry Jones down against that New Orleans team.
Well, listen, if you have to have a speech from Jason Garrett to get jacked up for a divisional game in December to determine who's going to be first place in the division with 3 games left, then you probably got a problem. Like Jerry Jones don't have the right guys in the locker room.
It's what Jason Garrett always says.
Well, what Jason Garrett said is that winners focus on winning, losers focus on winners. Yeah. That was more about the comments from the linebacker for the Eagles.
A little less lip and do more production on the field. That's what it comes down to.
Your style, what you like. Our job is to talk about the athletes and let them talk, but when athletes talk, Jenna Wolfe gets mad.
I have a little hard time with that.
You mentioned intangibles. One note where the schedule makers did Philly no favors. It's not only that, like, listen, sometimes you're going to be playing a team who played on Thursday the previous week. That happens. So Dallas played on Thursday last week, but it wasn't one of those Thursday night games where their body didn't have time to recover because they had played on Thursday the previous week. So it wasn't the physically demanding that Thursday night games usually are. Meanwhile, Philly played on Monday. So at this point in the season, when everyone is beat up, when everyone's a little more achy, when everyone's a little more tired, Dallas got 3 extra days than they normally would coming off full rest. Philly has 1 less day than they normally would coming off full rest. That also, I think that matters in December in the NFL.
Right.
And that the Cowboys have almost double the time to prepare for the biggest game of the year than Philly does. That favors Dallas dramatically.
All right, we'll talk about this again, but coming up, Another big game. Can the Bears defense slow down those high-flying Rams and that offense? That's next on First Things First. Back here on First Things First, we'll get to Bears-Rams in a second. But first, check this out. CP3, nice dish to Clint Capella for the slam.
That's one of the few nice plays CP3 made. He is struggling, man. Just fresh off signing that monster extension, he is having far and away the worst year of his career.
All that fresh cash is holding him down, Nick. That's what it is.
Same game, third quarter. Dante Exum with the sweet wraparound pass to Derek Favors.
Oh, that was a nice pass. Right around Clint Capella. So we got the Australian going around the Swiss kid.
Little sauce from Dante.
So I picked up on that when you said the Swiss kid. That's where I
thought you might be thinking we were talking hot chocolate.
Nick, check this out. I was a little thirsty. Check this out. The dunk from a guy by the name of Tyler Curry. He's 5'10". 5'10". Watch it again.
So hold on. Let's see what he's doing here. Goes there.
Come on, we have not seen that before.
That's special. Just the coordination that it takes to be able to pull that off in the air. Unbelievable.
Listen, the evolution of the dunk, Chris Carter says I'm wrong. At some point, someone's going to bust out the front flip. At some point, 15 years ago, Isaiah Ryder going between his legs was groundbreaking.
Yeah.
This guy's now going
without the trampoline?
Well, yes, Jenna. We've seen mascots do it with the trampoline. That would not be groundbreaking.
Just want to make sure the rules are set. NFC playoff picture now. 11-1 Rams in Chicago to take on the NFC North leading Bears. Shouldn't be too tough for the Bears. They just have to stop the Rams' NFC best scoring offense. Shouldn't be too tough for the Rams. They just have to score on the Bears' #2 scoring defense in the NFC. And it shouldn't be too tough for Mitch Trubisky, making his first start after missing 2 weeks with a shoulder injury and facing the Rams. All right, Kenny, who's got the edge in this one, the Rams offense or that Bears defense?
I'm going to say that Bears defense, but I also have to put a little caveat in there because that Bears defense has to have an offense that's at least competent.
Sure.
Because the last couple of weeks they've looked in that with Chase Daniel as their quarterback. Like losing a game on the road against the New York Football Giants, who have 3 wins through 11 games, like that's unacceptable. So, I mean, this is a situation where I think the Bears defense is like, man, we got to have Mitch Trubisky back, and there's an opportunity for us to potentially affect our seeding in the postseason and make sure that we have a favorable matchup, at least in the wild card round.
Right.
So I think that's what you're looking for, because if you're looking at this Bears team, I think they're locked into the 3 seed, but you got to keep an eye on them because the Dallas Cowboys aren't far behind. So that was something that they want to try to maintain, and this win would go a long ways to helping them do that.
So it feels to me like the Bears' ceiling is the 3 seed, but I don't think they're locked into it because if they lose this weekend and the Cowboys win, they both have 5 losses. I think that's what you're saying. Like,
exactly.
It is going to be almost impossible for them to get up to the bye line, for them to get up to the 1 or 2 seed.
No, that's not going to happen.
But they could fall back, and there's a big difference in my eyes in the NFC this year between being the 3 and the 4 seed, between getting what would likely be a red-hot Seattle team with all that playoff experience with Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson in the first round as the 4 seed will, and getting whichever of the team, whether it's Minnesota or whichever Carolina is a flawed team that gets in at the 6th line. Here's the thing. I think the Bears defense can argue the Bears can argue they're better at defense than the Rams are at offense. They can make that argument. I think in 2018 that doesn't matter that much. I think in this year with these rules, the Cowboys-Saints game to me was an enormous outlier.
Yeah.
Because I think in today's NFL, great offense against great defense favors the offense every single time. The only way to me the Bears have, I shouldn't say the only way, the most likely way they have a real chance at not just keeping it close, they should be able to keep it close, but actually getting the win is if they get some offense from their defense. They lead the NFL in defensive scores this year by a decent margin. They've got 6. No one else has more than 4. I feel like that's what they have to do. I feel like they have to go out and score defensively because where the Bears defense has had its truly dominant games has been against average offenses. Against the Patriots, they played well. Still let the Patriots score 24 on offense. Forget the 14 on special teams.
Yep.
Like, we have a great defensive performance in the NFL this year against one of these really good offenses is hold them in the mid-20s. Like, again, the Cowboys-Saints game is an outlier game. So can they, if you hold the Rams to 27, that's 8 beneath their season average, but can you get to 28? I think it would take a defensive or special teams score to do that, because even though Mitch Trubisky's an upgrade over Chase Daniel, I don't think Mitch Trubisky right now is an above-average NFL quarterback. He might turn into that, but right now I don't believe he is.
Well, let me say this. As far as what we're talking about defenses and based on how they're playing the game offensively now, I think the game is going to change a little bit once we get to this part of the schedule and on into the postseason. Like, the intensity picks up, the speed of the game picks up, and that usually favors the defense. And you got to take into account the weather in this situation because it's at Soldier Field. So that Rams offense that wants to play fast, I've never seen a cold player play fast. So, I mean, this is a situation where I think that the Chicago Bears would have an advantage having them come to their place. And this game ultimately, to me, is going to come down to this. Which defensive star can wreck the game? And it's going to come down to Khalil Mack versus Aaron Donald making game-changing plays. Now, I'll say this. Khalil Mack has more around him. So, Nick, you always use the term force multiplier. I think there's a greater chance for Khalil Mack to be a force multiplier in this game, create opportunities for Roquan Smith, Danny Trevathan, Leonard Floyd, Eddie Jackson, all of those guys.
I believe he has better people around him than Aaron Donald.
But that's what I'm saying. Right, that's my whole point. So I think that there'll be more opportunities for that Chicago Bears defense to have takeaways and to affect the game more so than the Rams defense.
All right, so let's just break that down and take it one step further. If you're going to go out and make the Rams a one-dimensional team, where do you even start? Do you start with stopping Gurley? Do you start with stopping the passing?
Listen, if I'm trying to beat the Rams, I dare Jared Goff to beat me. I know Todd Gurley can beat me. I think it is hard to make this point because his numbers over the last year and a half have been so exceptional. But I don't know that Jared Goff is great. I know he's played great within the Sean McVay, Todd Gurley system, but I know Todd Gurley, even if I dedicate my entire game plan to stopping him, still might be able to beat me. I am very confident that if I say, okay, we're going to try to take away Jared Goff and the passing options and see if Gurley can beat us, I know he can. So I'm going to focus everything on Gurley and say, hey, if Jared Goff's making these throws, because I've seen Jared Goff in that Chiefs game, even though they scored all those points late in the game when they had a 2-score lead, miss guys. I saw him last week.
Didn't Gurley not score a touchdown, though, in that game?
What Todd Gurley in that game, you're correct. He did not score a touchdown. But Todd Gurley throughout the year has been outside of the quarterbacks, the best quarterbacks in the league, Todd Gurley has been the best offensive player in football this season.
Sure.
Like, he might win Offensive Player of the Year if it doesn't go to a quarterback once again. And so to me, I think that if you're going to try to slow down the Rams, make them one-dimensional through the passing game and hope you can affect Jared Goff with pressure.
Well, what it comes down to is the choice that Vic Fangio is going to have to make. What personnel did he march out on the field? Because Sean McVay and that Rams offense, they're almost exclusively 11 personnel. That's one back, one tight end, 3 wide receivers. So are you going to match that with nickel personnel, or are you going to play base? Because if you try to match it with nickel, they're going to gash you with Todd Gurley. If you play base, it's got to be in the passing game. That's where the plays are going to be made. You've probably got a mismatch with the safety on a wide receiver. So I think that's the choice that Vic Fangio is going to have to make. But I'm right there with Nick. I'm going to make Jared Goff beat me because I know Todd Gurley can beat me. It's still up in the air whether or not Jared Goff can make it happen at this time of year versus a quality opponent.
And, I mean, they have done well without Cooper Kupp, but the wide receiver core is not at full strength. Like Brandon Cooks, we know how good he is, and I know Richardson's played well, but I feel like that is the one, that's the area, it's the lesser of two evils, right? They obviously can beat you either way, but you got to pick one. This is, you know, at the beginning of the year, I like to look at the schedule. Certainly with 4 games left,
also
this is the time of the end. But this is the time of year where you really can start talking seeding. If the Rams get through this game,
that's it.
It's smooth sailing for them. That's where the Cowboys did them a huge favor by beating the Saints, who obviously had the tiebreaker with them after this week. Home for Philly, then at Arizona, and home for San Francisco. If they beat the Bears, they have 15-1 and the 1 seed written all over them. And what we thought was, wow, can the Rams go to New Orleans and win? They might not have to deal with that. In fact, they likely won't have to deal with that if they win this game. This is far and away their most challenging game left on their schedule. They get through it, they're looking like a special regular season.
Rams can clinch the first-round bye with a win over the Bears. It'll be a good one to watch. Got to take a break coming up. Can the Dolphins knock off the Patriots in Miami for the 5th time in 6 years? That's next on First Things First. Tomorrow, a college basketball doubleheader tips off on Fox. The action starts at 2:30 Eastern as Indiana battles Louisville. Then it's number 12, Wisconsin, taking on Marquette. Catch all the action on Fox and the Fox Sports app.
I don't encourage irresponsible drinking, but if you want to be just smashed by about 5:30 p.m. Eastern, take a drink every time a Wisconsin player takes one of those weak sauce charges instead of playing real defense.
Oh.
Wow, tell us how you really feel.
Sorry, Sam Pepper, producer extraordinaire who went
He
to
got kicked out of Wisconsin, doesn't matter.
Time for us to go viral. His mom is going to not want people to know that, so he didn't.
Well.
LeBron had an epic performance Wednesday night against the Spurs, so of course one of our favorite guys had to give his take on LeBron's night. Take a listen to this.
Good morning. Welcome to Undisputed. We are live from L.A. I'm Jenny Taft with Skip Bayless, and we think Shannon Sharp. Hey, Shannon.
Yeah. Me and the goat. Hey, that is.
I didn't know this was coming.
You know, Skip, look what I got. Got me a nice candle, because I know you be dry snitching. I got me a wet towel. Don't worry about what that wet towel is from here somewhere.
Oh, right there.
Because where's it?
To your right, to your right.
Oh, there it is right here. Got a wet towel, because you be dry snitching. Nice candle. Nice touch. Got me a mile. Got me some of this old Snoop. How you doing, Skip?
You know, you should be ashamed of yourself.
You should be ashamed. If you like this, I said, I think I need to get a bigger size.
Oh.
Because I asked for LeBron size. I think I'm a little bigger than LeBron. What you think?
I think.
Skip.
Oh.
Listen, I
let's
love
hear it.
Shannon Sharp. Can I register one on the record complaint?
Go for it.
So that in his mouth, Jenna, is a Black and Mild.
That's a cigarette.
Wood tip, yep.
It's a wood tip Black and Mild cigar.
Cigar.
I've been smoking Black and Milds since junior year of high school, unfortunately. And now, when I walk around the city and someone sees me smoking a Black and Mild, you know what
No,
people
they
say to me?
credit-
They're like, oh, you got that from Shannon. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. That was my corner. Shannon used those size 48 shoulders, elbowed me off the corner, and now people think I'm biting his style.
Just a little bit, Nick.
Just a little bit.
You clamoring for Black and Mild real estate.
I mean, yeah. It is
like
the only frustrating thing. I love Shannon Sharp.
Love him.
And man, it takes a bald man to wear a jersey on television, but if anyone can pull it off, it's Shannon Sharp.
The only question I have about what Shannon did is, did he do the workout the night before or the morning of?
Or literally during
That's
the
it.
intro.
Maybe
Exactly.
both.
A little bit of both?
Maybe
I
both.
mean,
No question he
look at
did
that.
arms before he came on the set.
question.
No question.
All right, time now for some stories to start your morning. The Heisman Award ceremony takes place on Saturday. Kyler Murray and Tua Tagovailoa are the overwhelming favorites to win. What do you think, Nick? Who do you think gets the award?
Kyler, I believe, should win it, and I believe he's going to win it. Something really interesting happened in the online sportsbook world yesterday. Yesterday morning, Kyler was a minus 140 favorite to win it, so a slight favorite. By last night, he was a minus 290 favorite, so an enormous favorite. So at this point, the online sportsbooks say Kyler is going to win this award. I thought it was very close, Candy. And then championship weekend happened. One guy was injured and ineffective. The other guy was spectacular. I'd go Kyler.
Yeah, I'd go Kyler, too. He's done something that we've never seen before. He's thrown for over 300 yards a game, and he's rushed for over 60 yards a game. Never happened before in college football. They've been playing college football a long time. So Kyler Murray won the Davey O'Brien Award last night. I think that gives you a little insight in terms of where the Heisman voters are leaning.
All right, to the NFL now. Alex Smith is still in the hospital dealing with a pretty bad infection related to his surgery for a broken leg. Washington said in a statement, "We would ask that everyone please honor the Smith family's request for privacy at that time." It's a fairly grave response by the team. Chris, what was your reaction to this news?
Well, my reaction is I feel for Alex Smith. He was in my draft class. I've dealt with something similar, a staph infection. I was in the hospital for 2 weeks, one of the most painful injuries that I've ever had. I mean, it's a tough break for Alex Smith, no pun intended, and his prayers up for him and his family.
He's one of the best people in the NFL. I've had some contact with him when his time in Kansas City, but also from talking to people who know him very well. One of the most conscientious guys, a guy who was a punchline in the league, I think somewhat unfairly early on, fought through it, turned himself into a quality player, was really good for the Chiefs, was playing well for Washington. This is, sports-wise, this is tragic right now. And so at this point, you're worried about his non-sports health. So thoughts, and if you're the prayerful type, prayers to Alex Smith and his family, because this is scary stuff right now.
All right, let's move on to Thursday Night Football. Derrick Henry had an unbelievable night last night, rushing for 4 touchdowns, including this 99-yarder. Titans beat the Jags 30-9. Nick, how impressed were you with Henry's performance?
I mean, just 17 for 238, 4 scores, and a 99-yarder. This is one of the rare performances where you take out the 99-yarder, still would have had 16 for 139, still would have had a monster night. You know what Derrick Henry is?
What is
or
it?
At least last night? What Leonard Fournette was supposed to be.
Wow.
A big, bruising running back that can
You took
also
it
run
there?
past.
You took it there?
Yeah, because why
I think that's fair, because 3 shots from the 1-yard line and you can't punch it in.
Right.
That defense collectively let go of the rope in that situation, and the result was Derrick Henry hitting his head on the goalpost.
Why were they at the 1-yard line? Because Fournette got stuffed, as you're saying, repeatedly at the goal line. That Henry was excellent. The Titans were excellent. The Jags and that team Tom Coughlin has built is a mess right now.
Well, they're a mess because they don't believe in the quarterback situation. But you know what? I got to say, you called it before the season started. Jacksonville Jaguars are going to miss the playoffs.
Yep.
Not only that, but they're awful. They're one of the worst
Bad
teams in
team.
football.
Finally, Steelers heading out to Oakland Sunday to take on the lowly Raiders. Pittsburgh trying to break the 2-game losing streak without running back James Conner. But Big Ben Roethlisberger says he's not concerned about the running game. Nick, you trust Big Ben to carry this offense while Conner is out?
I think he absolutely can do it. Now, what we know is when Big Ben has to throw the ball 40-plus times, which is an enormous number, he's already done that 8 times this year. Steelers are 3-4-1. Games where he throws less than 40, they're 4-0. So they're at their best when he does not have to do what he is going to need to do during this stretch. Now, they're playing Oakland, so I think they're going to be fine either way. But I do think that they need James Conner as far as you can't go from an A-plus running back in Le'Veon Bell to a B running back in James Conner, and now a replacement level running back in Jalen Samuels or whomever you're going to trot out there. Stephen Ridley is, I guess, their other option, and be okay and just be the same. You're going to be markedly worse, and this is a team that right now doesn't have much margin for error. They're a half game up on Baltimore as we sit here today.
Well, you talk about not having a margin for error. The one thing that concerns me is how much Big Ben has been turning the football over the last 3 weeks of football. He's got to stop throwing the ball to the other team in order for this Pittsburgh Steelers team to go where they want to go. So, I mean, I understand there's been a lot going on with the Steelers in terms of dealing with distractions on the field. Performance is not necessarily being at the standard that we're used to seeing Pittsburgh. But this is the time that they've got to right the ship, because this is an opportunity to clean up some of the mistakes that they've been making for the past month. Because keep in mind where they're going after this, what they're going to have to deal with. The New England Patriots, the New Orleans Saints. Those are teams that we're considering amongst the best in football. And if they're going to compete with those teams and try to make a push and solidify their postseason position, then they've got to be able to clean up the mistakes. And I think this is the perfect opportunity for them to do that.
Nick, we had the same conversation earlier in the season when Lev Bell wasn't showing up. And we said, well, now James Conner has to step up. Before, we all knew what James Conner could do. And we said, well, now the pressure is on Roethlisberger. You're going to have to throw more. Have the Steelers set themselves up with a type of offense where they could plug in a running game and it can work because of the fact that the pass is, for the most part, set up?
Whomever their running back is going to have the advantage of every team's going into a game saying they're worried about AB. And if they're not worried about AB, they're worried about Juju Smith-Schuster. And Big Ben, for all his off-the-field stuff that irritates me, on the field, he's an excellent player. But to Canny's point, he's turning the ball over not only too often this year, but in the worst spots. Leads the NFL in red zone interceptions, has a bottom five red zone passer rating in the league. His mistakes have been at the most crucial times, at the most damaging times. So when you now have to rely on him even further, and this is something, by the way, that predates James Conner's injury. This year, the Steelers are passing the ball 67% of their snaps. For comparison's sake, since Lamar Jackson took over the Ravens, they're running the ball 65% of their snaps. So think about how reliant we think the Ravens have been on the run game. That's how reliant the Steelers have been on the pass game all year long. So it's not going to be some type of culture shock to Big Ben, but he's got to take care of the football, particularly when they don't have a run game to lean on. And if you don't have a run game to lean on to salt away leads late, you can't turn the ball over in those spots either. Yeah,
you create opportunities for what happened in the Sunday night game this past week against the Chargers, where they come from behind after getting into a double-digit hole. So, I mean, I'm totally with you in terms of the Steelers needing to have more balance. But in terms of the turnovers from Big Ben, the Steelers were always going to be a team that was led by their offense in 2018, just based on how the roster was constructed. So when you have a quarterback that's giving the opposing team's offense extra possessions, knowing that your defense is not the strength of your team, that's playing away from what is supposed to be your winning formula. So it just doesn't make sense. And so that's why I think Big Ben has to concentrate on not making those critical turnovers, because if he doesn't, his team has a decided advantage in terms of being able to win games.
Well, and because the Steelers defense has, even though it's played better as of late, they don't force turnovers. Like they're not one of the better teams in the league.
You said they played better of late, but I mean the second half performance against the Chargers,
correct.
You can't take that out of your mind.
No. It's a great point. And the Chargers had 3 drives in that game. They took the length of the field in the second half of that game. Touchdown, game-winning field goal, 100%. But even when they were playing better, I should say, the Steelers defense, they weren't forcing turnovers. The Steelers are bottom 5 in the NFL in turnover margin, which is typically only the worst teams are in that category. The Steelers have been able to overcome it. It's harder to overcome when you are now down to 3rd and 4th string running backs.
All right, let's talk about another team in the AFC. On paper, the Patriots are all but a lock to win this weekend. 9-3 team taking on the 6-6 Miami Dolphins. No-brainer. They lock up the AFC East for the 10th straight season with a win Sunday, but it's not a no-brainer. It's a brainer.
Those are tough for Jenna.
Miami owns the Patriots at home, winning 4 out of the last 5. So, Kenny, use your brain. What do the Pats have to do to avoid another loss in Miami?
Yeah,
you see what I go.
I'm going to do something that Nick Wright is not doing when he's talking about this Pats-Dolphins matchup. I'm going to actually use logic in this. And so I know what the record is for the New England Patriots over the last 5 seasons down in Miami. They've only won 1 of the last 5 tries. But with this Pats team, being able to run the football the way that they are, 375 yards rushing combined in the last 2 games, by far their best back-to-back rushing output of the season. If you give Tom Brady, who we would all agree is in the conversation for the greatest quarterback of all time.
He is the greatest quarterback.
If you give him that type of balance on offense and you allow him to be able to utilize the play-action passing game, the sell-it passes, which open up the middle of the field where Gronkowski and Edelman can attack it, that makes this offense virtually unstoppable. So I'm looking at this Patriots team now, and I think that they're hitting their stride. They're building momentum, and this is what Bill Belichick teams do. They always continue to get better as the season progresses, and ultimately they're playing at peak performance once we get to this time in the calendar in the NFL schedule.
Listen, the Patriots should win, and your point on the running game is a good one. They not only are the Pats running the ball as well as they have really this decade, this year with Sony Michel, so they spent a first-round pick on him, and he's proved worth it so far, but they're up against a Miami defense that's 30th in the league against the run. So that is one of your strengths against one of their biggest weaknesses. But what we can't do with the Patriots is only say, we can't build in all this, here's what the history says, except for when it works against them. Here's what the history says as far as past this year. They struggle in Miami. Brady, 7-10 in his career in Miami.
Right.
The Pats, losers of 4-5 in Miami. And here's what recent history says. The Patriots stink on the road. This year, they are not a good road team. So I understand why you can make the argument, yeah, of course the Patriots should win. I don't think they will. They show me the game. They've played great on the road this year. The best game they've had on the road was the Bears game, but that was 2 special teams touchdowns, which is not duplicable to me. In fact, we know it's not, especially in today's NFL. Like, I don't know that anyone from this moment forward will go to Foxborough and win a football game. I also don't know that the Pats can beat any decent to above average team on the road. And the Dolphins, we can poke fun at Ryan Tannehill. They're 6-6. They're 1 game back of the playoffs. Now, I don't think Dolphins are a very good team. They might not even be a good team. But in today's NFL, they are in that meaty middle of average. You know who's also in there? The Titans, who whooped the Patriots on the road. The Lions, who are below that. The Jags are well below that. Teams that beat New England when New England had to go to their building. And those weren't places that New England historically struggled at. Absolutely.
On the road. But let me ask you a question. Explain this idea to me of another team having your number and what that means to a team as well disciplined, as well coached, as well quarterbacked as the New England Patriots. As a player, do you just say, oh, you know, we keep losing there, and then that sticks in your head? I mean, what is the psychology behind letting another team sort of creep into your psyche?
Well, I don't know how much it is a psyche thing or psychology things in terms of a team having your number, but I will say this, it's a division opponent. And so when you play a team twice a year, there really aren't a whole lot of secrets between the 2 organizations in terms of what those teams like to do, play calling, schemes, X's and O's, all of those different things. Like, you're familiar. Like, Cam Wake is familiar with what the New England Patriots are trying to do to neutralize him and how they want to attack their defensive scheme. But I think when you talk about these types of games, you have to go above the X's and O's, and you have to think about the actual players. And I trust the guys from New England because of the sample size that I've seen from them. They've been far more consistent this season than the Miami Dolphins. So I look at this game and I say the Miami Dolphins, even though this is a situation where they've dominated the Patriots the last 5 seasons at home, I just don't think that this is that same Patriots team and this is not that same Dolphins team. I look at what Nick talked about in the Tennessee Titans game where the Patriots struggled on the road. That was a different Patriots team than this Patriots team today. It's not necessarily about who you're playing, but also when you're playing them.
Is it that different of a Patriots team than one 2 weeks ago struggled against the Jets? That was 13-13 late in the third quarter against the Jets?
Well, they were coming off of a bye week, so that has to factor in.
But usually that factors in the positive for New England. So maybe it will come up here Monday, and I will have picked the Patriots to lose, and as is often the case when you pick the Patriots to lose, you look like a dope after the game. But to answer, one of the things about I believe playing in Miami is when we talk about weather in the NFL, we almost only talk about bad weather. Man, it's the high on Sunday in Miami. I was looking it up. It's 83 degrees. Like this is the one place every year the Pats have to play at this point in the season. It feels to me like their game in Miami is usually post-November. It's not. Yeah. It's not like that's locked into the schedule. But a lot of these games, their Patriots' few November, December losses have been in Miami. The heat is something the Dolphins are used to. And that it might not have the impact on the passing game the way it does, but it seems to have an impact on the Patriots. They have one game a year that late in the year usually they got to go and they're sweating as opposed to bundling up. It's the Dolphins game, and it seems that the recent history is it's affected them. The Dolphins have dealt with it better because it's not like the Dolphins in this 5-year stretch have been a good team. Like they've been average almost every year.
I have an idea. Why don't we actually make it warmer in this studio just so we can apply the exact same philosophy and then see how we do the next segment where I don't have to bundle myself up during commercial breaks. Don't you think that's no? Okay, well, it's just a thought.
Use more of that brain power to heat
Coming up, hey, Melo and LeBron. What do you think? Does that have a nice ring to it? I'll tell you why we're talking about that next on First Things First. Welcome back to the show. Former NBA All-Star Carlos Boozer is here. So we've got two super tall people now and then two very, very, very average, short, average, just other humans also sitting next to the tall people.
Yeah. Well
Sorry
done.
about that.
Still standing by you being tall, Nick? Still doing that?
I mean, whatever 6'1" is what I am.
Okay.
You're above average. You're a tall guy.
Thank you, Boo.
These
guys got some running joke going.
He's a point guard, though, in the NBA.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd look down at Chris Paul.
He's no guard.
Wow, so disrespectful.
I love CP3, but it's accurate. It's accurate.
All right, Booze, let's talk unemployment rate. At this rate, Carmelo Anthony will be on the shelf for a good while. Hasn't played in a game since being shut down by the Rockets earlier this year. But now, according to reports, LeBron James says he'd be interested in Melo, perhaps joining him on the Lakers. Keep in mind, LA's been on a bit of a tear recently, a good roll, winning its last 4 games. What do you think, Carlos? Good idea or bad idea? Or is there an underlying reason why?
Yeah, I mean, I like it for Melo. I like it because, well, obviously, Carmelo and LeBron are very close. They're almost like brothers. So, you know, Melo's sitting out right now, being let go by the Rockets, who are struggling and tanking, but that's a whole other topic. For LeBron,
interesting one.
Yeah, for LeBron, he's one of those guys that gets the best out of his players. You know, Lance Stephenson's over there playing well. They got Beasley coming off a little bit here and there. If he's able to get Carmelo, especially with the rumors out there trying to package a deal around one of the players over there to get Anthony Davis to come over, if you have a Carmelo that can give you 13, 14, 15 points consistently, that helps a lot.
So, listen, Melo's one of my favorite guys. I'm a Syracuse guy like he is. I also think he has been I love basketball analytics, but I think the analytics wave has drastically underrated what he's accomplished and how hard his job was. Like, people say, he's inefficient. Iverson talks about this. It's hard to put up 30 shots a night. Like, you know this as well as anybody.
It's hard on 2K to put up 30 shots a night. He became a punchline when he shouldn't. He is one of the all-time scorers of his generation. So all respect to future first ballot Hall of Famer Carmelo Anthony. I don't think he has anything left. I think that Chris Paul was the draft class after
Carmelo and LeBron. And we are seeing Chris Paul all of a sudden look like, I'm not trying to shade him twice in a segment, but like he seems to have fallen off a cliff. Dwayne Wade is at a different part of his career. Like LeBron is distorting our view on what you're supposed to look like in year 16. I don't think LeBron, though, actually really wants Carmelo on the Lakers. I think he doesn't want Carmelo's career to end this way. And I think he was asked about it by Joe Varden. I don't know that, but Joe Varden's the one reporting it. He's covered LeBron for a long time in Cleveland, and I think what happened was he says, "Oh yeah, of course." Who wouldn't want Melo? He's trying to promote interest in his very close friend because nobody wants their career to end this way. Suddenly, where you get traded by one team, waived by another team, like he would be on the buyout of a buyout. So I don't think he'd be worse for the Lakers than, for example, Lance Stevenson. But I also don't think in 2018 Carmelo Anthony has a lot of value as an NBA player.
No, I'm right there with you, and I guess for me, it's not a question of what Carmelo would bring to the Lakers from an offensive standpoint, because I think he would help to space the floor. But my only question, I guess I have to pose this to you, is how does he fit defensively? Because he doesn't have the foot speed to match up against a small forward, and he doesn't have the size to match up against a power forward. So I think from that standpoint, he would be a liability to the Lakers, and I just don't know with the production that you're going to get from him on the offensive end, whether he's coming off the bench or whether he's a starter, whether that outweighs him being a liability on the defensive side of the court.
Yeah, he's never been a lockdown defender. I mean, Melo, like you said, is a traditional 24-point-per-game scorer, one of the best scorers of his generation. But as far as defensively,
but he's not that player anymore.
No, he's not that guy. You know, at this stage in his career, he come off. They're trying to make him into like a spot-up shooter in Houston. That's not really his game. Melo's more of a one-on-one guy, jab, take advantage, offensive rebound, get to the free throw line kind of guy. They had him just shooting jump shots. So I feel like if he did go to the Lakers, I feel like LeBron is a guy who's like a Tom Brady of our game, who can figure out a way to maximize Carmelo Anthony.
I think LeBron would maximize him, but I also think I know enough people that were around the Cavs last year or on that team that said when D. Wade came there, that actually was a bit of a problem. Not because D. Wade's a bad guy, but because all of a sudden there was the whole team in the locker room, and then it's LeBron with his arm around D. Wade. Because they have such a close relationship. I wonder if something similar could happen here. And the other thing I wanted to ask you is, even if you could maximize Carmelo Anthony, we talk so much about the growth of the young players, about Brandon Ingram, about Kyle Kuzma. Do you think that could potentially stunt, if he's your guy off the bench, your scorer off the bench, when those minutes could be going to letting Brandon Ingram run the offense when LeBron goes to the bench? Like, could you be stunting the growth of guys who are more important for the Lakers 2 and 3 years down the line?
Yeah, that's a great point. For me, it doesn't make sense right now. They're rolling, like as she said, they're rolling right now. They're playing very good basketball. But if they make a move to get another player, like an Anthony Davis, and they package players around an Ingram, where you lose maybe a Caldwell Pope and maybe another perimeter player, then you bring in a Melo where you actually need a perimeter player, that makes more sense. But right now, it stunts their growth a little bit.
Well, here's the thing. I don't feel like 2018-2019 season was the year that Magic and Rob Pelinka thought that they were going to be competing for a championship. I think they were waiting to get to the summer of 2019, where they'll have some options with free agency. And then, of course, some of the trades for the big guys. You talk about Anthony Davis. He's one of the names that pops up. They'll be more realistic. I think that this is a situation where you take advantage of having a season. I'm not going to call it a throwaway, but this is just an opportunity to get extended minutes for those young players to see what they can develop into, but more importantly, to see how they would fit in the construction of your team moving forward, whether you want them as a piece once you're able to attract another big-time free agent.
But Melo had an issue just coming off the bench when he played in Houston. He would have a much, much reduced role here, and he would have to be okay with, whether it's in L.A. or anywhere else, I mean, if you're saying he's struggling on defense, he's not he's not playing the role of the spot-up shooter, he's going to have to be okay with limited minutes and a limited role on a team.
How hard is that? Because you're a guy who obviously at your peak was one of the 4 or 5 best big men in basketball and an all-star level player, but you didn't just play 6 years. Later in your career, that was not your role anymore. How hard is that mentally to adjust from when offenses used to run through you, when you used to be the feature, the second feature guy, to where you just have a tertiary role? How tough is that?
I mean, it can be. It depends on how your ego is. Like, my ego was, I wanted to win at the end of my career. So my whole thing was about whatever it took to win. And for me, with the Bulls team that we had an MVP in Derrick Rose. We had Defensive Player of the Year in Joakim Noah, All-Star in Luol Deng. We had a squad full of guys that were very accomplished and were very good. So we all sacrificed a little bit for the greater good. But then we ran into LeBron. and we couldn't get to the finals. But that being said, it's all about your ego. If you put your ego to the side and want to just win, it's a little easier. But if you still want to be the man, you still have that bravado, you still want to take 20 shots, it's a problem.
I think it's really, I think it's really tough for guys that, and there's only been a few that have been able to do it, that were quite Carmelo Anthony's caliber. And there's no disrespect to you whatsoever.
No
but guys, Carmelo, for a brief period of time, was absolutely in the discussion for second, third best player in the world.
Right.
To go from that to the role you're talking about is an adjustment. We've seen Dirk do it. Now, Vince Carter has done it as well as anyone I've ever seen. Ray Allen. We have seen some guys do it. Jason Kidd did it in a different type of way where he was still impactful but was a different player. But AI couldn't do it.
No.
You know what I mean? Like there's a lot. I'm not picking on AI. There's a long list of guys who, once they're not who they had always been, it is too hard to take that role. I think Melo for a long time didn't want to admit he wasn't who he's been.
Right.
And now, even if he's ready, even if he thinks he's ready to admit it, I was at what might end up being the last great Carmelo Anthony game. It was in Brooklyn a few weeks ago before the Rockets move on from him. I think he hit 7 threes, he had 30 points, he was swaggering, he was playing great.
Yeah, he did.
And it was awesome to see. I'm glad I was able to see it. But you got the feeling that his feeling wasn't, oh, one more great moment. It was, see, this is who I can be. And unfortunately,
that's the problem.
And unfortunately, I just don't think, in fact, I know that's not who he can be consistently anymore.
All right, we're going to take a break. Carlos, stick around. Coming up, have Kyrie Irving and the Celtics put the rest of the East on notice? That's next on First Things First. Back here with Carlos Boozer, Boston destroyed the Knicks 128-100 last night with Kyrie leading the way with 22 points. The Celtics haven't met what we'd like to call their high expectations coming into this season, but they have won their last 4 after starting the year 10-10. Kyrie spoke about how Boston should approach the season moving forward. Take a listen.
We should have fun, kicking people's ass. We really should. It should be competition itself should bring out the best out of you. And the way you bring the best out of your opponent is you play at a certain level where they either match it or they exceed it or they don't do anything at all and they just give up. And I think as a competitor, you take advantage of moments like that where you just throw yourself into the game playing hard, not just trying to worry about what shots are coming or what schemes we're running tonight. It's just playing hard, and then you err on the side of doing that, and then you use your talent to get you over the hump. So I think that we've been doing a great job of that so far.
Carlos, let me ask you, have the Celtics turned a corner, or have they just played 4 great games that they've put together?
Yeah, I think we'd like to say that they've turned the corner, but the team that they played against, the Knicks, the Cavaliers, none of them were playoff teams. So it's kind of false, but at the same time, they're playing much better. They got to figure out the rotation with Rozier. Guys like Marcus Smart are playing great. Also guys like Marcus Morris are playing very well. So they have guys that are playing very well alongside Tatum and obviously Kyrie. But the reality is this. They started off very slow. We all thought that coming into the season, they'd be probably the favorite to go play against the Warriors in the finals. Now we're seeing Toronto is taking helm of the Eastern Conference. But these 4 wins that they got puts them 3 games out of 4th spot in the Eastern Conference. So they're right there, and it's still early December.
Listen, I don't think anyone thought, even when they had the slow start, oh, the Celtics might miss the playoffs. They're not in the position the Rockets are, a team with really high expectations that seems to be in total disarray. It wasn't just that this team was the overwhelming favorite to win the East. You had some credible people saying, you know what? If any team's built to challenge the Warriors, it's the Celtics that have all this depth, that have this great coaching, that have this great defense. And through 20 games, the defense was there, but it was one of the 5 worst offenses in all of basketball. Gordon Hayward was giving them nothing. Kyrie, the first half dozen games of the year, was playing really poorly, then turned it on. The difference these last 4 games, yes, it's been the schedule. They haven't played a single team over 500. And by the way, that's going to continue. Their next 5, Chicago, New Orleans, Washington, Atlanta, none of those teams are above 500 either. But the difference has been, during this 4-game winning streak, they've had the best offense in the NBA. It's 125 points per 100 possessions. Their offense has been firing. Now, is that something figured out? Is that the defense? Or is that the opponent? It's probably a combination of the two. But the real question for the Celtics is not, can they get to the 4 seed? The question is, can they at the very least duplicate what they did last year, which is go to the Eastern Conference Finals? And when I see Philly, which is better now that they've added Jimmy Butler. Milwaukee, which is better now that they have a living, breathing head coach. Toronto, which is better now that they have Kawhi Leonard. And to me, Boston sits about where I was a man on an island, thought they were going to sit at the beginning of the year. They're the 4th best team in the East, and they've got to do work to get to the 4th best team in the East. But I think that is where they went into the year, and I think that's where they're going to finish the year.
Well, I got confidence in Brad Stevens that this Boston Celtics team will figure it out, because we have to be honest in our assessment of it. They have a lot of talent on this team. So, I mean, when you look at the depth that they have, it's as good as any team in the Eastern Conference. So I think they'll figure it out. I think what they're doing right now, though, in terms of this win streak, is a product of the soft part of the schedule, as you mentioned. But that week leading into Christmas, that's what we're going to find out what the Boston Celtics are all about, because they got Milwaukee in there, they got the 76ers, I think Memphis and San Antonio. Like, they're going to get their oil checked in that part of the schedule. We're going to find out about that. But in terms of what's going on the offensive end, I think with everybody being healthy, there's a little bit of a learning curve in terms of trying to figure out how we're going to all fit together. Because this is the Boston Celtics team that we envisioned in terms of the people that they have on their roster available to them coming into the 2017-2018 season. But this is their first time trying to play together and seeing how it all works. But I think this Celtics team will figure it out. It's still relatively early in the NBA season. We're talking about the first quarter of the season.
Right.
We're not going to find out who this team actually is until the calendar gets to late January, early February.
Carlos, why is it so hard when you have an abundance of talent on your team? Guys who've played, this isn't their rookie year. They played with other talent. They played together, a good part of them. Why is it so hard to take so much talent and make it gel? Why does that all fall on Brad Stevens? And what's the problem with him trying to get this done?
Well, that's what you hire a coach to do, because at the end of the day, even what they had last year and what they accomplished last year going to the Eastern Conference Finals, as Nick said, going to Game 7, it's a whole different team this year, because you bring back a Kyrie Irving who was hurt, you bring back a Hayward who was hurt, and so like you said, you're trying to mix in all these guys to play at the same level, going after the same goal, and be okay with the roles. Again, it's an ego thing. They have more talent than they had last year, because you added 2 stars to the team that weren't playing last year. But you got to put your ego to the side. Everybody has to sacrifice a little bit. And they may have gone through some stuff in the locker room where they were like, man, I need more shots. Man, I need more playing time. That happens on teams.
And it's not just that they got Kyrie back from injury, who was there for the first 60 games of last year, and Gordon, who was there for the first 6 minutes of last year. Right. But it's that guys who last year didn't view themselves as stars, like now Jason Tatum. Okay, Jaylen Brown took a level up. Terry Rozier, not a star, but went from a guy who was, a 5th guard to a guy who a lot of people think is a starting guard in the NBA. But you mentioned earlier probably the best team you were on, that Bulls team that just couldn't get past LeBron. One of the things that made that team special, you guys had a ton of talent, but it was very distinct in their roles. Like Derrick Rose was going to be the offensive creator.
Absolutely.
Joakim Noah was the best defensive player in basketball and actually was a great passer as a center. Luol Deng was kind of going to do a little bit of everything. Like you were great leadership, whether you were off the bench or not, leadership, rebounding, toughness. You had all these boxes checked. The Celtics have a ton of talent, but it's a lot of overlapping roles. Like Jason Tatum and Gordon Hayward, very similar in what their roles are going to be. Like, we saw Terry Rozier come in and be 75% of Kyrie Irving. There's an overlapping role. Like, so they have all this talent, but to me, it's pieces that don't fit together as well as the teams that we've seen that you're talking about, where everyone knows exactly what they're supposed to do.
But that's Brad Stevens' job. That's why they hired Brad Stevens, and he's a phenomenal coach. I don't know why he didn't get any votes for Coach of the Year from his peers, but he's a phenomenal coach, and that's his job to figure that out.
That is one
And
thing.
then, as you know, as players, we have to accept what the coaches give us. Sometimes we have a hard time doing that, but as players, it has to be a give and take where we accept what the coach wants us to do for the betterment of the team.
The team right now in the East where everybody knows their role is Toronto. It's not just because Kawhi's playing great.
Good.
They look good because
Toronto's best team in the East, do you think, as well?
Right now, in December, absolutely.
Yeah, everybody knows exactly what they're there to do. Kyle Lowry's there to distribute, add leadership. Kawhi's going to be the best player on both ends of the court. Anunoby, whose name I haven't been able to pronounce for 2 years, and Pascal Siakam, they know what their roles are as far as toughness and defense. Like, everybody knows exactly what they're there to do. Milwaukee, now they have real coaching, is in a similar situation. Philly, one of the reasons I don't think have lived quite up to expectations is what exactly is everyone supposed to do there? Boston's dealing with a similar thing.
All right, Carlos, thanks so much for hanging out with us. Much appreciated. Got to take a break. Coming up, back to football. Is Dak Prescott's future as the Cowboys quarterback on the line Sunday? We'll explain next on First Things First. Welcome back. We'll get to Cowboys, Eagles in a second. But first, check this out. CP3 Nice dish to Clint Capella for the slam.
One of the few Rockets highlights last night. CP3 is one of the best ever at that specific pass.
That pocket little pass right there, 100%, man. 100%.
Absolutely. I hope he's saving himself for later in the year because thus far through 20-some games, he has not been good.
Ooh, same game, third quarter. Dante Exum with a nice wraparound to Derek Favors.
Oh, the Australian kid wraps around the Swiss kid.
Swiss kid.
Yeah, he gets extra points for the degree of difficulty on that one. That's pretty smooth right there.
It wasn't a Swiss miss. It was a Swiss make.
Oh, Jenna, except the Swiss guy's the guy getting dunked on.
I know, okay? So. Just hold off. Finally, check this out. Nice dunk from a guy by the name of Tyler Curry, 5'10".
How? That's crazy, man.
He's about your height, right, Nick?
He's a
couple
inches shorter than me. Kenny, just because you have gigantism doesn't mean you can height shame regular height people.
All right, let's talk some Cowboys. They've won their last 4 games largely due to the improved play of Dak Prescott. And over the win streak, he's combined for 7 TDs and no picks. Nick, how important is this game for Dak's future, this game against the Eagles coming up, and for the future of the Dallas Cowboys?
All right, so I'm going to say something I don't know if Cowboy fans are going to want to hear. Because I think they're going to win. And they win this game, they win the division de facto with 3 games left to play. And they're going to bring everybody back next year. And that means not only does Jason Garrett comes back and Amari Cooper gets a contract extension and they re-sign DeMarcus Lawrence, it also means if they win this game and win the division, that number 4, Dak Prescott's agent, is going to walk into Jerry Jones' office. Jerry Jones, who you remember, after the Titans' loss, when the Cowboys were 3-5, said Dak Prescott is going to get extended. He's going to walk into that office and say, here's what my quarterback's done, 13-3. Number 1 seed division champ, rookie year. 9-7 in the year where Zeke was suspended for 40% of the season. Then backed it up and won the division again. I'm going to need $27 million a year, and I'm going to need it right now. And so with that being the context, I say this. For the Cowboys long term, I think it might be better they lose this game and they collapse down the stretch. Because
Take that in for a second.
What I know is this. You can't win in the NFL when you are paying an average or below average quarterback like he's a star. We've seen it. What ruined the Ravens? That exact thing. What is ruining the Lions? That exact thing, among other things. What is putting a ceiling on? What put a ceiling on? Hell, the Bengals or the Dolphins a few years ago. That exact thing. What's hurting the Jags? That exact thing. Taking a quarterback who is okay or worse, and paying him like he's a top guy. And if the Cowboys win the division, and if they win Sunday, they win the division, they are going to pay Dak this summer like one of those guys. And there ain't no discount coming, Candy. Not when Sam Bradford got 2 years, $40 million. Not when Case Keenum got 2 years, $36 million.
Or Kirk Cousins going to Minnesota getting $28 million a year.
Right. Like, we are talking a minimum of $25 million a year, probably closer to 27, 28. And Canny, they'll be locked into this team. And I actually like a lot of this team, but they have cap space for the first time in a long time this summer. It will all be spent on Amari Cooper, DeMarcus Lawrence, Dak Prescott, and those other guys who need second contracts.
Well, let me tell you what they ain't going to do. They can't pay everybody because it's a salary cap sport. So you mentioned DeMarcus Lawrence, getting him re-signed, Ezekiel Elliott, and Amari Cooper. You're probably at best going to get 2 out of those 3. Now, I would prioritize DeMarcus Lawrence because the identity of this team is defense, not the offense. So, I mean, to let DeMarcus Lawrence walk out of the building would be franchise malpractice.
But they have to re-sign Amari Cooper.
But they have to re-sign Cooper because that's their first-round draft pick for the 2019 year. So, I mean, that's their guy. And then, of course, Ezekiel Elliott, he looked at the Todd Gurley deal this past offseason. He says, I want to get paid as well. So, I mean, there's not enough money to go around to take care of everybody. So you have to prioritize how your team is going to win next and who the guys that fit that mold, fit that formula. And I just don't know paying Dak Prescott is the way that you need to go if you're Jerry Jones.
Okay, so the way you prioritize that list makes sense for you, makes sense for you. I don't know if that's how Jerry Jones will see it. I don't think his list is prioritized the same way.
You're totally correct. And the thing is this. The Cowboys, and the reason I know Jerry wants Dak as his quarterback.
Yeah.
But if they were to go from season being over through 8 games, to all of a sudden the division favorite through 12, to falling apart in the final quarter of the season, which is what a loss to Philly and then not winning the division would be, then you know what I think Jerry will have on his side? Time. I think they will, in that scenario, I think they let Dak have his 4th year of his rookie contract, which is next year, without an extension, knowing if he balls out, we can franchise him and deal with it then. But if the Cowboys go from 3-5, which is where they were, to 10-6 and division champs and hosting a playoff game, Dak is getting that extension. And I call it the Matt Ryan line. You guys can pick a different quarterback if you'd like, but quarterbacks Matt Ryan's level or above, they are worth that money because they are worth what you're essentially saying is my quarterback is worth 3 other players. But quarterbacks beneath it, when you pay them, it ruins you. We have all of this evidence. How teams get to the Super Bowl is have a superstar quarterback or have a cheap quarterback and superstars around him. That has been the theme of this league for the last decade. The Cowboys, I want their fans to enjoy this run, but also understand what a win tomorrow or what a win Sunday would mean. It would mean that going into next year, Dak is making probably on a 5-year, $125 million deal, the Derek Carr deal, at a minimum, and that's what you have. And unless he raises his play 3 notches, he's not going to be able to make the value up with his play.
Are you guys both on the same page that we're not seeing the same Dak as we saw his rookie year, and then we're not going to see that same Dak? That Dak, if he could have done that, would be worth the money. The Dak we've seen in the last 2 years, perhaps not.
Well, that Dak had the benefit of NFL defenses not having tape on him. So we didn't come into that season expecting Dak Prescott to be the starting quarterback. Everybody had prepared for Tony Romo, and it's a vastly different offense that Scott Linehan is running with Dak Prescott as his quarterback versus number 9. So I think that's what led to Dak having the rookie campaign that he did. Also, Ezekiel Elliott having 1,000 yards rushing on first down. That actually helps too. And so I think we saw who Dak Prescott really was last year during Zeke's 6-game suspension, and I can't get that out of my mind. And that same Dak Prescott is who we saw in the first half of the season. Now, this Cowboys team is playing a lot better since that point in the season, since that first game in Philadelphia, that Sunday night game, and they're continuing to ride that wave. But that's because of the defense in the running game. Dak Prescott, to me, is a passenger in all of this. He's not the driver. He's not the straw that stirs the drink. He's not that guy. And so to pay him $25 million plus on an average annual value contract extension just doesn't make a whole lot of sense in my opinion.
Dak's rookie year, he threw 4 picks. Like, that was the key to that season. He was historically great by a rookie standards and really great by any standards at taking care of the football. He has not been that guy since then. But just look at the teams beneath my own made-up Matt Ryan line, if you will. Like, again, this is just my own. And what do they all have in common? They're all screwed. Like, I mean, sorry, Jimmy G, I'm prognosticating that, but and I should take Alex Smith's face off there now that he's been injured. But this is, all of those teams are in awful shape. And you look at the teams above, they are all contenders. Like Matt Ryan's, guess what? His team, they got injured this year and they've been unproductive. But that is, and where do you think Dak Prescott is? Is there anyone above the Matt Ryan line? You're like, oh, Dak's better than him. Hell no.
No.
And so, like, that is now the best case scenario for the Cowboys, obviously win the game, win the division, and Jerry hold off on giving Dak that extension. I do not think that universe exists. I think they will, if he's won 2 out of 3 divisions and he has a record of 13-3, 9-7, whatever they are this year, call it 10-6. I do not think Jerry will let that quarterback go into the final year of his contract, even if he should.
You make lists. You love making lists.
I love making lists.
I have a list of my favorite Nick Wright graphics, far and away my favorite one.
Oh well, listen, it's my ideas.
Creative. I think it's great.
The great Jamila Huxtable makes all those for us, and so she deserves the credit.
List 2 through 5, I don't remember, but I definitely like that one.
Yeah, a little questionable though. Cousins above the Matt Ryan line.
Oh wow!
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
Critique.
I'm just saying.
We'll see.
I'm just saying.
Take a break. Coming up, Aaron Rodgers cannot stop talking about his former coach. That's next on First Things First. On Sunday, it is a Fox NFL doubleheader starting with Drew Brees and the high-powered Saints taking on the Buccaneers. And it's America's Game of the Week. We just talked about it. Carson Wentz and the Eagles battling Ezekiel Elliott and the Cowboys in a big NFC East showdown. It is all on Fox and the Fox Sports app, and you can check your local listings. Time for stories to start your morning. Alex Smith is still in the hospital dealing with a pretty bad infection related to his surgery for a broken leg. Washington said in a statement, We would ask that everyone please honor the Smith family's request for privacy at this time. Cris, what's your reaction to this news?
I feel for Alex Smith. He was in my draft class, and he's one of the overall good guys in the NFL. And I've dealt with an infection situation, one of the most painful injuries I've ever had. I can't imagine what he's going through right now. I mean, this is tough for Alex Smith.
Given the reporting surrounding this and just the wording of that statement, you feel like this is elevated to a level past football to overall significant health concern. Alex Smith is one of the best guys in the league and has had one of the best stories of overcoming. People called him a bust, where he was successful in San Francisco at the end, very successful in Kansas City. All thoughts, and if you're a prayerful type, prayers out to Alex Smith, because this is seemingly a very significant non-football situation at this point.
All right, let's move on to Thursday Night Football now. Derrick Henry had an unbelievable night. He rushed for 4 touchdowns, including this 99-yarder that he muscled his way to completion. Titans beat the Jaguars 30-9. Nick, how impressed were you with Henry's performance?
It was nice to see on the field last night a first-round running back that actually looked like a first-round running back, because Leonard Fournette certainly wasn't that. And why was he in the position run for 99? Because Leonard Fournette had gotten stuffed at the goal line the possession before. Henry was spectacular. The Jags are a mess, and it might cost Doug Marrone his job. I actually think Doug Marrone's a good coach. A lot of this needs to fall at the doorstep of Tom Coughlin, who built this team, who made a lot of odd personnel choices related to this football team, who you saw during the broadcast last night charting plays as if he's still the coach. The Jags are a disaster. That falls at Tom Coughlin's doorstep.
Well, they're a disaster because they trusted Blake Bortles to be able to take them to where they got to last year, the AFC Championship game and beyond. And we all know that Blake Bortles just ain't that quarterback. But guess what? Somebody sitting here at this table called it before the season even started. But I got to ask you this, Nick.
It's okay.
What was that DB thinking when he saw Derrick Henry in the open field?
I'm scared.
Guys, radio for backup?
Absolutely right. I appreciate you giving me credit on my Jags predictions. CC never gives me credit on my good predictions, just my wrong ones.
Steelers heading out to Oakland Sunday to take on the lowly Raiders. Pittsburgh trying to break their 2-game losing streak without running back James Conner, but Ben Roethlisberger says he's not concerned about the running game. Nick Wright, you trust Big Ben to carry this offense while Connor's out?
This week, yeah, because this week, who do the Steelers have? Oh, that's right, Oakland. And I think Big Ben, I think Josh Dobbs, their backup. I think maybe Mason Rudolph, their third stringer, could beat Oakland. But next week against New England, what you do not want is Bill Belichick to be able to say, oh, all I have to worry about is Antonio Brown, so I'll take him out of the game. So this week, yes. Next week, in their biggest game of the season against New England, not so much.
Well, you talked about it. They're throwing the ball twice as much as they're running the ball. They're overly reliant on Ben Roethlisberger in that passing game. And the one thing that you can't be if you think you're a contender is one-dimensional. So I think that's something that they've got to fix. And ultimately, Big Ben throwing the ball that much, he's going to make some mistakes. That's what he's done the last month of the season. So they got to try to limit that any way they can. Right now, if he's not going to do it himself, the play callers have got to do it, Mike Tomlin and that coaching staff.
All right, Chiefs second-year quarterback Patrick Mahomes will be facing perhaps the toughest test of his young career this week. On the other side of the ball is a dominant Ravens defense that has allowed the fewest yards and fewest first downs this season. Here's what Baltimore's defensive coordinator had to say about the Chiefs' offense.
I think Mahomes is Montana. I'm talking about the San Francisco Montana, not the Kansas City Montana. You know, so... And I mean, I think, you know, how everything's cyclical and, you know, history repeats itself. I think you're seeing that combination between Andy and Mahomes of Montana and Bill Walsh. I mean, I really do.
A little psychological warfare there, really. Compare him to Montana. Cris, what's the best way for the Ravens defense to keep this high-powered Chiefs offense, to keep them in check?
Well, I think the best way for the Ravens to keep that Chiefs offense in check is not through their defense, but it's actually through what their offense can do in being able to control time of possession. Because if they keep the ball as long as they did in this Chiefs game as the Atlanta Falcons game, where they won time of possession by 2-1, they had the ball 40 minutes, then it's going to be hard for Pat Mahomes to have that same type type of performance where we're used to seeing them put up 35, 40 points. I look at this Ravens team as a team that's built to take the fight to Arrowhead. I mean, what travels this time of year? A defense, a strong running game. And, oh, by the way, the Ravens play pretty solid special teams. Their head coach was a former special teams coordinator, John Harbaugh. So I look at this Ravens team and say they can take the ball away, they can rush the quarterback, they can stop the run. So I think that all three of those phases in terms of their offense, defense, and special teams have to be complementary. They've played that way when Lamar Jackson is their quarterback. They run it over 60% of the time. I think that complements what their defense brings to the table. That's how you beat this Kansas City Chiefs high-powered offense. You keep them off the field.
So here's the thing. The Chiefs are the second right now highest-scoring offense in the history of pro football. They're averaging 37 points a game. Only the 2013 Broncos have ever averaged more in a season. That is despite the Chiefs being 26th in the NFL in time of possession. They haven't had the ball a lot. Doesn't matter. They're scoring quickly. They have faced the least third downs of any team in football. So how good's your third down defense? Doesn't really matter if the offense you're facing never gets to a third down. The way, and historically, yeah, what you would think is exactly what Canny said. How do you stop a high-powered offense? Keep them off the field. Running game, defense. But the Chiefs' losses this year have not come against great defenses. The Chiefs' 2 losses this year have come when they have scored 40 and 51. You have had to outscore this team to beat them. There's a lot of buzz surrounding this game as a potential upset game.
Yes.
This is the game that the Chiefs lose, and then next week they play the Chargers, and all of a sudden they go from the 1 seed to the 5 seed. I do not think a team that has no passing attack, which is what Baltimore has right now, can go to Arrowhead and beat a team with the league's most prolific passing attack. I do not think Lamar Jackson is positioned, as great as that running game and defense has been, Lamar Jackson is positioned to go into Arrowhead and even attempt to match points with Pat Mahomes. Like, what are you going to hold the Chiefs to? They've scored less than 30 twice all year. 27 against the Broncos and 26 against the Cardinals. So you're going to have to get to 28 even with a great defensive game.
But we said the same thing for the Dallas Cowboys going into that New Orleans Saints game. And I'll say this, styles make fights. And the Baltimore Ravens style of play is going to be tough for this Kansas City Chiefs team. Now, you talked about this prolific offense not having time of possession but still putting up a lot of points. Well, that means they're having a lot of big plays, a lot of chunk yardage. One thing that the Baltimore Ravens defense does really well is eliminating the big plays. Like Wink Martindale, I played under him when he was on the defensive staff in Baltimore when I was a Baltimore Raven. One of the things that they always preach is don't allow the big play. Make offenses put together 8, 10, 12 play drives. And I just got to believe with the talent that Baltimore has on the defensive side of the ball, they're going to be able to make enough impact plays to mitigate that Kansas City Chiefs offense. So, yeah, maybe the Chiefs score 20, 24 points, but I'm not going to say that they're going to put up a 35, 40 performance. Not this week. It's not happening.
I mean, listen, 24 points would be their season low. I do not think the Ravens can win this game unless they are at least +2 in the turnover battle. They need to get a strip sack of Patrick Mahomes and an interception in order to steal those possessions, because a bad game for this Chiefs offense this year is 31 points. And we know the Ravens are not trying to score or not even going to compose scoring in that area. I will say that statistically the Chiefs' pass defense is their weak link. That's not accurate. Their run defense is the weakest part of their team. The stats are skewed because teams have been trailing so early and often they've abandoned the run. The Ravens will, even with an 8-man box, which Kansas City will make them look at the whole game, the Ravens will be able to run the football on Kansas City.
And you're going to know exactly who's going to run the football.
It doesn't matter how many guys are in the box. When your quarterback is a runner, you can't account for that as a defense.
All right, let's move on to Aaron Rodgers now. It's been a dramatic week for the Packers. They fired their coach, Mike McCarthy, after losing to the Cardinals at home. They then fired their associate head coach for sending this tweet. Ponder this. What championship teams have our great leadership, period. It's not the offensive guru trend. It's not the safe trend. Find somebody that is going to hold number 12 and everybody in this building to a Lombardi standard, period. Losing sucks. So Aaron Rodgers addressed this earlier in the week.
There's always been, I think, a great deal of accountability under Mike's program for the last 13 years. There's consequences for actions that are outside of what's in the best interest of the team. And there's never been, I used to always tell him, I said, hey, if you need to call on somebody in a meeting to let everybody know that we're all on the equal playing field, call on me first. Call me out. Just so everybody knows there's, nobody's off limits. We're holding everybody to the same standard, and I feel like that's the way it always was.
Kenny, what do you think about what Rodgers had to say?
Well, first of all, I'm going to say this. Mike Murphy believes in accountability because they got Winston Moss up out of there, didn't they?
Yeah, he'd been there for a long time, too.
In a hurry. But in terms of what Aaron Rodgers is saying, listen, I know that much has been made about him not having a good relationship with Mike McCarthy. Now, I would probably put the onus on the coach to make sure that he has a good working relationship with the most important player on his team. But ultimately, what they were doing on the field wasn't good enough. So you can preach accountability, but this is the first time, and I don't know how long the Packers are going to miss the postseason 2 years in a row. Now, last year, you can say it's because of the Aaron Rodgers injury, but you really don't have any excuse for what this Packers team has done this year. I mean, they've fallen flat on their face, and there was a change that need to be made. So I think that Mike Murphy's hand was tied. They had to make this move. But moving forward, I think Aaron Rodgers gave you the flexibility to be able to do some things personnel-wise. You'll have an opportunity in free agency with the cap space. They're going to have between $40 and $50 million. They got 2 first-round draft picks. So Brian Gutekunst, their general manager, is going to have an opportunity to upgrade the talent around Aaron Rodgers. And so when you look back on them signing him to a contract extension before the season started, their general manager knew that he's going to have a 4 to 5 year window to put a championship caliber supporting cast around Aaron Rodgers. So I think that's what the focus has to be moving forward. And they were just in a position where they had to decide whether or not Mike McCarthy was going to be the guy to lead them into that championship window. And I think this season we got the answer. It's an emphatic no.
I don't like what is seemingly happening across all media in relation to the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers. I don't know when the switch happened, but we went from probably erring too much on the side of it's never Aaron Rodgers' fault when he wasn't having a great year this year to now all of it's Aaron Rodgers' fault. Makes too much money, it's selfish. He's not accountable, he's got bad relationships, he wants the coach fired. Let's all calm down. He is the best player in the league. He is not playing up to that standard this year. Instead, he's playing like the 4th or 5th best quarterback in football. A real down year for Aaron Rodgers. Last year, they were 4-1. He broke his collarbone. They did not have a backup or a 3rd or a 4th plan. Instead, the plan was, who was the backup last year? Brett Hundley. Thank you. And this year, they upgraded by going to Deshaun Kaiser, who had to play 1 quarter of football this year and gave a touchdown to Khalil Mack. And then Aaron Rodgers pulled him out of the fire. Aaron Rodgers went into this year dispirited. We know that. He didn't want his quarterback's coach fired. But evidently, you have to fire the quarterback's coach that Aaron Rodgers likes so he can coach up who again? Oh, yeah, Deshaun Kaiser. He didn't want Jordy Nelson gone. Now, Jordy, I think his best football is beyond him. But when you have a guy who has carried the franchise, maybe give him a little special dispensation to the guy he's going to be throwing to. There were a lot of things this Packers team did that I think put Aaron Rodgers in a bad place. And then the defense hasn't shown up to a road game yet. And it is not Aaron Rodgers' fault that they lost a playoff game when they scored 45 points early in his career. It's not Aaron Rodgers' fault they lost a playoff game where he completed 2 Hail Marys. It was not Aaron Rodgers' fault that they had an NFC Championship game where they blew a 12-point lead, and then an NFC Championship game a couple years later where they're down 3 scores before he had 1 sustained drive against the Falcons. He has been carrying this franchise. Finally, someone was held accountable in the coaching staff in the offseason, during the season of Mike McCarthy, and now we're going to blame 12? I just think it's ludicrous.
Who do you think would make a good coach? Who do you think would come in and not only be a good coach for 12, but a good coach for this Packer team, given where they are right now?
Well, here's the thing. It's going to have to be a coach with a resume that number 12 is going to respect. Because, if you have somebody come in that's adjusting to the learning curve, somebody that's a coordinator, it's going to be a challenge not having that manager. What does that mean? A seasoned
guy, a guy that's coached many years, a guy that's won a Super Bowl? What does that
Well,
look
I'm just
like
saying somebody that's actually had the job before, right?
Not a first-time head coach.
Not a first-time head coach. So, I don't know who's the candidate that would make the most sense. I think somebody like Josh McDaniels would make sense, but Chris Carter's already mentioned it, there's a wink and nod agreement in place for him to be the successor to Bill Belichick in New England. So, it's going to have to be somebody of that ilk, because a first-time head coach, it's tough because it's a managerial position more so than it is a coaching position. So I don't know that you can just bring somebody in, a rookie head coach, and it's going to have the respect of Aaron Rodgers. And if your best player is not buying in to the message that you have, the rest of your locker room is not going to buy into what you want to do as a head coach.
Lamar Jackson might have unintentionally screwed the Packers here. if the Ravens hadn't gone on this winning streak, it looked like John Harbaugh might be on his way out. I think he would have been perfect. You could bring in that bright, young offensive mind everyone wants instead of as your head coach, as your coordinator, and you could have John Harbaugh, a very well-respected Super Bowl champ head coach who is more of a, I almost want to say project manager, because he was a special teams guy. He's not focusing on just one side of the ball. He's focused on the big picture.
It's more of a macro view.
Exactly. And so, but he's not going to be available. And so now I know CC has mentioned guys like Jim Caldwell, guys that have had 1 or 2 jobs already in this league. What I know is this. As much as some of my friends in the analytics community want the Packers to go with one of these potential bright young minds, you got 3 to 4 years left of Aaron Rodgers. You can't, at his peak, you cannot risk that the coach you hire doesn't know what he's doing and that you're doing this all over again 2 years from now. I think you have to go with the safe, conservative option at the coach, a guy who's done it before, and then take your chance on the coordinator if you want to bring someone from the college ranks or promote a guy like Eric Bieniemy in Kansas City, try to steal him away. Something like that at the coordinator, not at the head coach spot.
All right, we've got to take a break. Coming up, can the Bears defense slow down the high-flying Rams offense? Next, first things first. Back here, first things first, Pro Bowl linebacker Bart Scott joins the show. Hey, Bart.
Let's get it over with. Hey, how you doing? Let's get it over
here we
with.
go.
I got E. Crow with the Packers. Let's go ahead.
Didn't
and
we
do
make a watch for watch bet? Wasn't that something like that?
I don't know
that
about
the Packers
that.
were going to win the division?
Wow. It was my Casio watch.
Your Casio watch, not this one? Not that one there?
Versus your Techno Marina.
Okay. All right. Bart Scott said write it down. He always tells me to write things down. Write down eye discipline. Write down this. Write down that. Write down the Packers are going to win this division. Since then, they fired their coach. And they're
It's a small L to hold.
Even Nostradamus was wrong in some of his predictions.
Okay. Good
Listen,
to see you.
I hold L's every single
What up, Chris
day.
Canty?
Wow, what up, dog?
Maintain.
I ain't doing no more bets with Bart Scott, by the way.
Suns out, guns
no more
out.
bets.
Yeah, he lost his. I lost mine.
Just line after line. Huge game in the NFC on Sunday. You think this dress makes me look like I'm too muscular?
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
I like it.
Your muscles make you look too muscular. It ain't the dress.
Shut up.
Run up if you want to.
It's sitting next to Nick Wright that does that,
right.
Jeff.
That's
That's
what makes
it
it
is.
look. Thank you, Canny. That's the truth. 11-1 Rams in Chicago to take on the NFC North leading Bears. Classic offense versus defense matchup here. Rams are scoring conference best 35 points per game, while the Bears defense giving up just 20. Second best in the NFC. Side note, Chicago gets Mitch Trubisky back after missing 2 weeks with a shoulder injury. All right, Bart, who wins, Rams offense or Bears defense?
I think the Chicago Bears. I'm always going to side with defense. We saw that a couple of weeks ago with the Saints and the Dallas Cowboys. And it's going to be some interesting matchups because when you look at 2 defensive MVP candidates, I think if Khalil Mack didn't get hurt right now, we'll be speaking with him and speaking about him in the same breath as we're speaking about Aaron Donald. The difference is Chicago has a complete team, and the Rams, even though they have arguably the best defense player in the game, are one-sided, and they're going to have to beat you one way. I think that the Chicago Bears can beat you in multiple ways.
Well, and when you're talking about Khalil, he has a lot. Canty, you said this earlier. He has a lot better defensive players around him than Aaron Donald does.
But I don't know if you can really say that.
Really?
You know, because we look at Peters in a bright light. We look at Ndamukong Suh. They brought Fowler over. The problem is one MVP candidate elevates the play of everybody else, and one just elevates his own play.
Oh, see, I don't think that's fair at all.
No
I think
way.
Aaron Donald has been like Ndamukong Suh is at this point in his career, a nice player. He is not a dominant player.
Okay.
Marcus Peters got hurt the same week Aqib Talib did, has not been playing at a high level all year, and Talib's been out most of the year. There's also a reason why Dante Fowler, a former top 5 pick, was available at the trade deadline as he was. Meanwhile, in Chicago was a very good defense last year before they added Roquan Smith, the most pro-ready linebacker in the draft, and Khalil Mack, the best linebacker in all of football. I like Chicago's defense from top to bottom. With all that said, it is not Bart Scott and Chris Canty's NFL anymore, where a dominant defense is who you would take over a great offense. Like that was true not that long ago. It's how I think both of you guys had your best seasons. Both of you you guys have a lot of your accolades in those types of years. What do you?
The circle of life.
Okay, maybe eventually we'll come back there, but you know where we are in the circle?
Is this week,
right now we're at the bottom
Okay,
of the circle.
so we're at the bottom, but where are we in the NFL calendar?
We're in December.
Okay, where's this game going to be played?
This game's going to be played in Chicago.
Okay, so what's the weather going to be like?
I checked earlier. It's going to be about 28 degrees at kickoff. Now, no wind, or I shouldn't say no wind, no rain or snow, but very cold at kickoff.
Very cold. So is a cold player a fast player, Bart Scott?
Nope.
Okay. Exactly. So, I mean, there is going to be a decided advantage for the Chicago Bears team and how they play as opposed to what the Rams want to do. We talked about how the Rams are almost exclusively 11 personnel on offense. That means 1 tight end, 1 running back, and 3 wide receivers. So, to me, this game is going to come down to how does Vic Fangio decide he wants to match up. Is he going to match personnel with nickel and bring in another corner so he can match those wide receivers with corners? Or is he going to play base defense and make sure that you stop Todd Gurley and then let what happens with Jared Goff in that passing game be what it is? I think that's what's going to determine the complexion of this game, but the ultimate winner of the game is going to be decided by which one of those defensive MVPs is going to wreck the game. And to me, I would lean toward Khalil Mack just because he has a better supporting cast. Akeem Hicks and Leonard Floyd, Roquan Smith, Danny Trevathan, Eddie Jackson, all of those guys. There are more playmakers on the Bears defense than there are on the Rams, and I think that's what gives them the edge in this game.
How's Chicago going to how are they going to match points, at least, with the Rams?
Have you seen the Rams defense? The Rams defense is horrible. Horrible. Yes, they survive on turnovers, forced fumbles by Aaron Donald. How do you fix that? You run the ball at Barron, what's his name? Mark Barron? Yeah, converted safety in the box. You run downhill right at him, and you keep that explosive offense off the field. See, if you've ever played in Chicago, if you go in there, that grass is about this long. Yeah. Ain't no fast cuts, ain't no sudden movements. And also, that dirt is oily and greasy. You slip out, they're going to have to figure out what type of cleats they're going to have to deal with. If also these guys have been out in L.A., they had sunbathing out there with the suntan lotion, they're having fun with each other. Now you come over there where those shoulder pads start to stiff up and we put in that phone booth, we're going to see what this team is really made out of.
So then why are the Bears 8-4? They
lost last week because Chase Daniel was their quarterback, not Mitch Trubisky.
Okay, but they also, what did the Giants put up? 30 in that game? Yeah. Including a touchdown pass by Odell Beckham Jr., right?
Everybody has a game like that. You know, every team has a lapse in concentration and saying, listen, we're playing the Giants. We're going to go and just walk right over them. Sure. And you realize that they're an NFL team, too.
No, absolutely.
Well, Chase Daniel threw a pick 6, and then we talk about Taylor Gabriel late in that game had the fumble that put the Giants at point-blank range. So you want to break down how they lost. That's why they lost.
That's one of the 4 losses, right? Yeah. The reason they lost to the Packers is the defense couldn't get off the field repeatedly in that game. One of the reasons they lost to the Patriots was, the special teams allowed 2 touchdowns. That defense allowed 24 points. I think the Bears have the best defense in football. Them and the Ravens, you can flip a coin and argue whichever one you like. But those are the 2 best defenses in football. Both of those teams this weekend are playing 2 of, if not the 2 best offenses in football. And I think where we are right now, no matter the time of year, everything has been tilted towards the offenses. A great defensive performance is holding these teams to 24, 27 points. I know the thing in our memory right now is what the Cowboys did to the Saints. That is the outlier game of the season. Maybe now, on Monday, the Bears win a 17-14 game. The Ravens knock off the Chiefs 16-12. All come in and say, hey, all defensive players, Chris Carter's saying the same thing. It's going to change come December and January. I don't think that's the case this year.
Okay, well, here's the one thing I will say. We can't act like Mitch Trubisky hadn't had a 5-touchdown-plus performance during this season. Exactly. So I'm just saying that this offense for the Chicago Bears can score points. They're not only going to stretch the Los Angeles Rams defense vertically, but they're going to stretch it horizontally with some of the things that they do, concepts with Tariq Cohen, and then you talk about Josh Bellamy, and then Anthony Miller, all of those skill position receivers, and then, of course, their true number 1, Allen Robinson. They have playmakers. They can score points, and Matt Nagy is creative, and he's not going to put Mitch Trubisky in situations that he can't handle. So in terms of impacting the play of the quarterback, I think the Bears defense will have more of an impact on Jared Goff than the Rams defense will have on Mitch Trubisky, and ultimately that will be the difference.
Because Trubisky has the will, so once Aaron Donald comes there, he can make that defense pays, and it's going to be how Wade Phillips decides to defend that and how he tries to confuse him.
I think Trubisky's got the 2nd most rush yards of any quarterback this year. He's a very underrated athlete.
All right, Bart, stick around. Coming up, can the Cowboys make it 5 wins in a row and ruin the Eagles' season at the same time? That's next on First Things First. Tomorrow, a college basketball doubleheader tips off on Fox. The action starts at 2:30 Eastern. As Indiana battles Louisville, the number 12 Wisconsin takes on Marquette. You can catch all the action on Fox. And and the Fox Sports app. Back here with Bart Scott, we are going viral. Last night, Derrick Henry tied Tony Dorsett's record with this 99-yard touchdown
So disrespectful.
Run. Eat that. So that run led to Hall of Famer Dorsett tweeting out, "Congrats to my Heisman Trophy brother Derrick Henry on tying the 99-yard record tonight. That's stiff arm. Rumble, young man, rumble."
Boy,
Come on, guys, how cool is that?
It's very cool, but Tony Dorsett's record will always stand because Tony Dorsett did it on a play where the Cowboys only had 10 men on the field. They were down a man they didn't bring out the whole team that play. He still ran for 99.
So you give him extra credit for
absolutely more yards per player on the field.
That is a Jaguars season in a nutshell. Like, I didn't see the effort from the backside, guys taking angles to try and get there, guys making business decisions. Like, come on.
Forget the angle to get there. A.J. Boye wanted no parts of Derrick Henry, and then Miles Jack giving us that fake hustle. I know what that is, Miles Jack. You wasn't really giving an effort right there. That looked like Carmelo Anthony trying to play defense. He ain't really trying to get it.
You ever saw a Chihuahua fight a Rottweiler? Me. But I tell you, it ain't pretty.
That was a microcosm of the Jag season. Stoned on 4th and goal from the 1, and then 99 the other way. That's how you go from the AFC Championship game to 4.
I've seen guys fake hustle at the gym. What did you call it? Fake muscle?
Well, I said fake hustle.
Yeah, fake hustle and fake muscle at a gym.
Fake muscle would be.
I could see right through it. Anyway, big matchup in the NFC East because I know you don't want to talk about that.
Do not want to talk about that.
Eagles and I'll explain to Jim in a second. Eagles and Cowboys, Philly trying to hold on to their playoff lives against division-leading Dallas. Dallas has won 4 straight games, a win streak that actually started against the Eagles. But according to some players, Cowboys are setting themselves up to blow it. Take a listen.
I mean, look at Dallas' history. They always choke, so we'll go down there and make them choke.
You know, Coach Garrett has a great saying, and I don't know where he got it from, but winners worry about winning, and losers worry about winners. So we're focused on ourselves in this locker room about what we need to do to get better each and every phase of this game and be ready for this week. We're not worried about he say, she say. When you play a game like this, that means what it means. What somebody says doesn't add any motivation. We know what we're capable of in this locker room. We know the team that we have. We just want to go out there and put that best team, the best team effort we can out there on Sunday.
Put that on the back of your yogurt, Dak. That's what I'm talking about. Triple action.
Dak Prescott talking real greasy right there. I mean, listen.
That's what 4 wins would do for you.
The guys in the Eagles locker room have rings. I don't know what Dak Prescott got.
Well, no, but you know what that is. That was last year they got rings.
Yeah, that's cool.
This isn't the same team.
But they've been there, done that.
Yeah, I got you.
Okay.
But, you know.
They've actually won playoff games.
Words hurt, Chris.
Yeah, I know. Is that keeping it way too real for Friday?
It's way too real for me.
Okay.
All right, let's dive into the game a little bit. If the Cowboys are going to extend their win streak, how do they do it? How do they beat this Eagles team?
I think they just go as business as usual. They're on a roll right now. They found their identity.
Yeah.
They understand who Dak is, who he isn't, but really Amari Cooper being able to be that number 1 receiver has opened everything up for everybody else, mainly Ezekiel Elliott. And listen, this is a phone booth team. You know, Mark Colombo now is the offensive line coach. They're coming downhill. You know, Zeke has got those shoulders square. Guys are banged up now. You have to make those decisions, those business decisions. Guys don't want to stand in front of him. But also, you got to give credit to this defense. You know, we've seen what this defense did to the Saints. But Jalen Smith and Vander Esch, I tell you what, may be the best duel. And I know Sean Lee's coming back. I don't know if I would tell Sean Lee, you know, maybe take another week off, let these young bucks get it because they're getting it done. They're running, and the defensive line are allowing these 2 guys to scrape and make all the plays.
The one thing I want to see, Bart, is this team, the Dallas Cowboys, match the intensity level that they had against the New Orleans Saints because it felt like when they played that game, their season was on the line. Remember, Jerry Jones was talking about how they need to play every single play like a Super Bowl play. Yeah. DeMarcus Lawrence saying that they're going to choke them out. Like, they were locked in on that game, but after you beat a Saints team, which was regarded as one of the best teams, if not the best team in football, there's a tendency to kind of relax and read your press clippings and believe that you're better than you are. So I want to see the Dallas Cowboys come out with the same intensity level, especially on the defensive side of the ball, because that's what's going to have to lead this team if they plan on winning this division. It's going to have to start with their defense. Keep in mind, their defense was outstanding against the Saints in sudden change and in the red zone. They're going to have to duplicate that type of performance if they're going to beat the Philadelphia Eagles this week.
Keep that same energy when you see me.
There you go. That's what I'm talking about.
Intensity, attention detail, bulletin board, none of that should be a problem for the Cowboys this week. Well, for either team. But if Dallas wins, they win the division. Like it is over. They won't have the little X next to the name for having clinched. But if they win, they would have to go 0-3, and Philly would have to go 3-0. That's the only way they win this game and don't win the division. Philly, on the flip side, with that being said, their whole season's on the line. Like I know they've won 2 in a row. They have not played great these last 2 weeks.
No.
The Giants had them dominated in the first half.
Yep.
They made a mistake. They had some odd 2-point conversion decisions for the Giants.
Yeah.
Eli threw a terrible pick right before the half.
They gave the ball to Saquon Barkley 5 times in the second half, which was ridiculous.
In the second half, they went away from Barkley. And then against Washington, that was a 14-13 game. That was a close game, and then they went to the Mark Sanchez experience. And
Sanchez, put some respect on that.
Okay, my apologies. That's your guy.
I talked to him. He said he's going to be better this week.
Okay, well, he
couldn't
couldn't
be
be
put
worse.
respect on his name when he ran into his own offensive lineman's butt.
Again.
Come on, man.
No,
Stop
man, that was Will Ford pushing
Stop
that dude
it, man.
back, man.
Stop it,
All right,
man.
listen. I understand that's your guy. I get it. And I agree with you. He'll be
Sanchez.
better because there's no way he's going to be worse, Bart, than he was this past week. But regardless, like, Philly, it's not like they're playing great. I understand they've won back-to-back games for the first time all year, but if you watch those games, they haven't been inspiring wins. But with all that said, Philly can flip the script of the entirety of the season with a win this week. They can put themselves for the first time all year back in control of the division with a win this week. And I do not think teams play Dallas and are intimidated by them. I do not think teams...
Not yet. Not yet, but if you look at those linebackers, how they scrape, listen, they can make you one-dimensional because when I look at the Philadelphia Eagles, they have nobody that I fear at running back. So that means that now I get opportunity to double Ertz and take him away and say, okay, if you want to throw all these little swing routes to Golden Tate, have at it. You can have 100 receptions for 80 yards if you want to.
And I think that's one of the reasons Philly this year has been so bad compared to last year on explosive plays. I felt like last year a lot of their explosive plays were either off-schedule stuff by Wentz, where he avoids a sack, coverage breaks down, finds a guy deep downfield, or on play action. And this year, with no Jay Ajayi, with Darren Sproles just now playing, they don't have a real threat for the run game. Right. And so teams can try to just keep everything in front of them defensively. And that's why while Wentz's overall numbers are very similar this year to last year, his numbers on deep passes are a shell of what they were last year. It was over 100 rating on deep pass last year. This year it's around 60, as double the picks to touchdowns on those throws this year. So Philly doesn't have the explosive plays. We know how injured their secondary is. All those things lead to them being the average team that they've been. Again, with all that said, they beat Dallas. Yeah. They're in first place in the division.
And to do that, to beat Dallas, I think you're going to need some of those explosive plays. You're going to need downfield passing from Carson Wentz. And even though they don't have the deep speed vertical guy, you still got Alshon Jeffrey, who can get down the field and win 50-50 balls. And then, of course, Zach Ertz, who's on pace to break Jason Witten's receptions record of 110 for a tight end. So, I mean, you still have some viable weapons. And Carson Wentz, you have to find a way to allow him to use his legs to put pressure on the defense. Like the Dallas Cowboys got after Drew Brees in that game against the Saints on Thursday night. That was a big reason why they won. Malik Collins, Tyrone Crawford pushing the middle of that pocket.
Randy Gregory.
And then Randy Gregory, Marcus Lawrence coming off the edge. So to me, when Doug Peterson says, yeah, we're going to do some things creatively with Carson Wentz, get him out on the perimeter with some boots, with some sprints, that put pressure on the defense, not only with the front guys in terms of moving the launch point, but also with the guys on the back end in terms of where the release is coming from the quarterback and the position that those receivers are going to be in. So that's how you buy extra time for Carson Wentz and those receivers to get downfield to get those big plays.
But that's when head coaches talk too much. Why are you going to tell me what you're going to try and do? Because now if I'm that and if I'm a 4-3 defense, what am I going to do? I'm going to put my guys in wide nines and say, okay, run the ball now. You're not going to be able to get to these edges. I'm going to pull you up real quick.
But if you get into a wide nine, it makes it easier for Josh Adams to run with the inside zone. And that's the thing that you have to look for, the chess match between Marinelli and Doug Peterson. So I think that's going to come to play in this. So there's no good answer when you start talking about, okay, what are the Dallas Cowboys going to do to negate Carson Wentz when he decides he's going to use his legs? I think Doug Peterson was reluctant to do that earlier in the season just because Wentz was coming back from the knee reconstruction. Right. But now a full year removed from that, I think he's going to, and recognizing where they're at in the season and having everything on the line, I think he'll be he'll be more of a risk taker in terms of the play calling.
We spent so much time talking about how the Cowboys needed to figure out who they were and what their identity was. We mentioned it the first 4 weeks that this Eagles team, coming off a Super Bowl win, still haven't figured out who they were. Right. And now look how far deep we are into the season. I still don't think they have an identity, and I think that's why it's hard to figure out how they go about winning a game like this.
The Eagles winning the Super Bowl last year and doing it the way they did, overcoming the injury to their left tackle, their middle linebacker, most notably their quarterback, I think it warped our perspective on what injuries typically do to a team. Yeah. This Eagles team is down 8 starters. This Eagles team is they switched out Torrey Smith for Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace played 1 game, done. Yeah. Their secondary, they're down to 5th and 6th string corners, which
hurts your special teams too.
Right, 100%, because those guys are typically just playing special teams. Now your special teamers are like 8th guy or below practice squad at the beginning of the year. They lost Jay Ajayi for the season. This is a really injured team that just because they overcame it last year doesn't mean they're positioned to do it this year. And their quarterback is coming off a major injury to where he's not the exact same guy he was pre-injury last year. One note for this game to watch for, no team in football has been as bad offensively in the first quarter as Philly. They've scored 28, not first drive, first quarter points all year. No defense has been as good in the first quarter all year as Dallas. So if Philly jumps out to a lead, that's something they've not been able to do all year long, then all of a sudden we could be thinking upset. But the odds are it's 3-0 Dallas at the end of 1, and that's probably the way the game's going to go.
You didn't have that written down, man? Who are you, Rain Man? How you remember all this stuff? Your lip gloss popping today, by the way, too.
This guy. Can I have my watch?
Sparkles?
Can I have my watch?
Thank you, Bart Scott. Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern. For Cris Carter and Nick Wright, I'm Jenna Wolfe. So long, everybody.